Night on the battlefield. Tank engines muffled, exhaust pipes covered with special nozzles, and vehicle bodies coated with a special light-absorbing compound. Soviet tanks moved towards enemy positions, remaining invisible in the darkness. Surprise is their main weapon. The Great Patriotic War was not only a clash of firepower, but also a competition of technologies and tactics. Night combat opened up special opportunities for the attacking side, but required special training and equipment. German observers, armed with binoculars and searchlights, constantly peered into the darkness, trying to detect the approaching threat. However, Soviet engineers developed a whole complex of measures that made tanks practically invisible in night conditions. Unmasking factors, muzzle flashes, exhaust sparks, engine noise. All of this required technical solutions. The command of the Red Army realized, whoever learns to fight effectively at night will gain a strategic advantage. Night camouflage of tanks became one of those little-known but decisive factors that brought victory closer. The history of tank camouflage dates back to the years preceding the Great Patriotic War. As early as the 1930s, Soviet military theorists recognized the potential of night operations. The first experiments were conducted during the 1937 maneuvers, when a group of enthusiasts from the Military Academy of Mechanization and Motorization of the Red Army proposed testing the simplest methods for reducing the visibility of combat vehicles. Initially, these attempts were primitive. Tanks were simply painted in dark colors, and crews were taught to move without headlights. However, it soon became clear that the main unmasking factors were not so much the vehicle's silhouette as the exhaust, sparks from the pipes, and engine noise. Similar experiments were also conducted abroad. German engineers worked on infrared night vision systems, while the British experimented with special light-absorbing paints. However, no full-scale programs for comprehensive night camouflage existed anywhere. The beginning of the war brutally demonstrated the importance of this direction. In the first months of hostilities, Soviet tank units attacking during the day suffered catastrophic losses from enemy anti-tank artillery and aviation. Field commanders began to independently seek solutions. Some units started conducting attacks at dawn or dusk. The turning point came in the autumn of 1941. A group of engineers led by Major Nikolai Krivoshein presented a report to the main Auto-Armored Directorate of the Red Army titled, "On Methods for Reducing Tank Visibility in Night Conditions." The document contained revolutionary proposals based on both pre-war experiments and initial combat experience. Krivoshein and his team proposed a comprehensive approach: special nozzles for exhaust pipes to dissipate and cool gases, sound insulating materials for engines, and special coatings for the hull that absorbed enemy searchlight beams. The first field trials of these solutions were conducted near Moscow in the winter of 1941-1942. The results exceeded expectations. Camouflaged T-34s remained undetected at a distance of only 200 meters from the observation posts of the simulated enemy. In night combat, a tank reveals itself long before visual contact. Bright sparks from exhaust pipes, glowing hot exhaust visible in the darkness, the characteristic roar of the engine. All these turn the combat vehicle into a noticeable target, even at a significant distance. Soviet engineers conducted a thorough analysis of these revealing factors and developed a whole complex of technical solutions. The main problem was exhaust flame. When a tank engine operated at high revolutions, plumes of sparks erupted from the exhaust pipes, visible up to 1.5 kilometers away. This was especially noticeable when the tank was moving uphill, as the engine worked under increased load. The solution proved to be both simple and elegant: special spark arrestor nozzles. They were metal cylinders with internal baffles of a special design. Exhaust gases, passing through the labyrinth, lost speed and temperature. and sparks were extinguished by striking the baffle walls. Several modifications of such nozzles were developed for T-34 tanks. The OT-42 model proved most effective, reducing exhaust visibility by 90%. The design was so successful that it could be installed in the field in 15 minutes. The second revealing factor was engine noise. An experienced observer could distinguish the characteristic sound of a tank engine several kilometers away. Two approaches were used to solve this problem. Firstly, mufflers were modified by installing additional chambers with perforated baffles. Secondly, special sound-insulating materials were used in the engine compartment. An interesting technical solution for reducing track noise was rubber pads between the track links. They not only reduced noise, but also increased the lifespan of the running gear. However, due to rubber shortages, this modification was applied limitedly, mainly to tanks of reconnaissance units. Light signals, necessary for coordinating tank actions in the dark, posed a particular problem. Standard headlights were too noticeable to the enemy. The solution involved special lights with a narrow beam and blackout attachments. The light from such lights was visible only from a certain angle and at a limited distance. For command vehicles, an infrared signaling system was developed. Small IR emitters, invisible to the naked eye, allowed simple signals to be transmitted between tanks equipped with receivers. In the struggle for tank invisibility in nighttime conditions, special paints and coatings played a crucial role. Soviet chemists created a revolutionary compound, codenamed Nachodin, Night 1. This matte paint contained special light-absorbing components, including finely dispersed soot and mineral additives. Applied to armor, it reduced the surface's reflectivity by 70% compared to standard army camouflage. Experiments showed that a tank painted with the Nachodin compound practically blended with the darkness at a distance of 300 meters, even under a full moon. When the enemy used illumination flares, the effect was even more impressive. Traditional paint reflected the flashes, making equipment noticeable, while the new paint absorbed most of the light. Alongside paints, special camouflage materials were also developed. The fabric Mgla, haze, created in Ivanovo textile factories, gained particular renown. Its distinctive feature was a special fiber weave and impregnation with a light-absorbing compound. This fabric was used to make covers that tank crews would throw over their vehicles during stops. An interesting solution involved removable screens made of wire mesh with sewn-on patches of Mgla. Such screens not only reduced the tank's visibility, but also provided additional protection against heat rounds, which was an accidental but valuable side effect. To protect against enemy searchlights, special camouflage nets with asymmetrical weaving were developed. Their peculiarity lay in their ability to scatter direct light without creating sharp shadows. A tank under such a net lost its characteristic outlines, transforming into a shapeless, dark blob that could easily be mistaken for a bush or a small hill. In winter conditions, white camouflage suits for equipment were used, but with a special impregnation that reduced the shine of snow in moonlight. Tank crews called them shubi, fur coats. They were made of several layers of fabric with air gaps, which further improved their camouflage properties. It is noteworthy that many solutions were born directly at the front. For instance, in 43 tank crews of one brigade began using ash and dirt mixed with used oil for additional side camouflage. This makeshift method proved so effective that specialists studied it, and based on it, developed a field version of the camouflage paste PM4. In the gloom of the night battlefield, a tank without reliable observation devices became practically blind. Soviet engineers understood perfectly. It wasn't enough to make the machine invisible. They needed to teach its crew to see in the dark. The development of night vision devices became one of the priority areas of military science during the Great Patriotic War. The first experiments with infrared technology began back in the 1930s in the laboratories of the All-Union Electrotechnical Institute. Talented physicist Pavel Kobojev, along with a group of young scientists, created a prototype device capable of capturing the thermal radiation of objects. However, until the war, these developments remained experimental. Wartime accelerated the process. By 1942, the first operational tank night vision device, "O," appeared. It was an infrared periscope that allowed observation of the terrain up to 400 meters away in complete darkness. Its operating principle was relatively simple. An infrared projector illuminated the space in front of the tank with light invisible to the eye, and a special receiver converted the reflected rays into a visible image. The development of aiming systems proved to be an especially complex task. The first infrared sight, North, appeared in 1943. It was installed on T-34 Commander's tanks and allowed aimed fire at distances up to 300 meters in complete darkness. The image was contrasty but blurry. Tankers joked that they saw the world as through cloudy glass. German engineers also worked on similar technologies. Their Falkenauge, Falcon's Eye, system was used on later modifications of Panthers and Tigers. However, Soviet devices had an important advantage. They were simpler to produce and maintain. German optics provided better image quality, but required ideal operating conditions and frequent adjustments. Integrating night devices into existing tanks became a real engineering puzzle. The internal space of combat vehicles was extremely limited, and each new device required space. Engineers at the Design Bureau of Plant Number 183 developed a compact modification of the Omega device specifically for T-34 tanks, reducing its size by almost half. Power supply presented a particular problem. Infrared projectors consumed a significant amount of energy, which required strengthening the tank's electrical system. On some vehicles, additional batteries were installed, further complicating the layout. By the end of the war, Soviet tanks received a new generation of night vision devices, the "8" ray complex. It included a commander's periscope, a gunner's sight, and a driver's device. The target detection range increased to 600 meters, and image quality significantly improved. A tank equipped with the Luch complex could operate effectively in complete darkness, while maintaining its own invisibility. Night combat demanded fundamentally new tactical approaches. Soviet commanders quickly realized that simply transferring daytime tank combat methods to night operations was insufficient. A special tactic needed to be developed, taking into account both the advantages and limitations of the dark hours. The invisible wedge principle became the basis of night tactics. Tank units formed a special combat order. The advance group formed the spearhead of the attack with 3 to 5 vehicles moving at a minimal distance from each other. 2 flank groups followed them, ready to exploit the breakthrough. This formation allowed for the concentration of firepower at the point of breakthrough, while minimizing the risk of detection. A system of signals was developed for coordinated movement in the dark. Tankers used subdued, specially designed marker lights, visible only from a close distance and at a certain angle. Commanders' vehicles were equipped with infrared beacons, invisible to the enemy, but discernible through night vision devices. An important element of the tactics was the suppression of the enemy's observation system. Before the attack, reconnaissance was conducted to identify the location of observation posts and searchlights. Artillery was tasked primarily with suppressing these targets. Simultaneously, smokescreens were employed, which proved particularly effective at night. Even dim moonlight could not penetrate a thick smokescreen. Special attention was paid to choosing the direction of attack. Preference was given to areas where tanks could use natural cover: ravines, forest belts, lowlands. An ideal approach was considered to be from the direction opposite to the moonlight, when tanks moved from darkness onto illuminated enemy positions. To maximize the effect of surprise, the silent approach method was developed. Tanks moved to their starting positions with engines off, using tow vehicles or inertia on descents. Then the crews waited for a conventional signal, after which they simultaneously started their engines and began a swift attack. One of the most effective tactical maneuvers was called the Wandering Ghost. Its essence was to simulate a large number of tanks while actually using only a few vehicles. This was achieved by moving a small group of tanks across different sectors of the front, turning their engines on and off at various points. This created the impression for the enemy that they were being attacked by a large tank formation, which often led to panic and premature retreat. Training tank crews for night operations was an extremely complex task, requiring a special approach. After all, the crew had to not only learn to operate a combat vehicle in the dark, but also overcome the natural human fear of the unknown in night combat. In 1942, special night driving courses appeared in tank schools. Future driver mechanics were first taught to navigate in twilight, gradually moving to complete darkness. A blind driving method was used. Cadets were blindfolded and had to drive a training tank relying only on the instructor's directions. This developed spatial thinking and an intuitive feel for the vehicle. Special simulators mimicking night conditions were developed for gunners. Target mock-ups were set up in a darkened room, which had to be detected and hit in conditions of limited visibility. The complexity of the tasks gradually increased. Interferences, in the form of flashes imitating shots, and smoke screens were added. Particular attention was paid to psychological preparation. Tank crews underwent a course of adaptation to night conditions, which included prolonged stays in complete darkness. This helped overcome instinctive fear and develop the ability to remain calm in stressful situations. Crew commanders additionally learned methods of maintaining the morale of subordinates in night combat conditions. In 1943, the first specialized training ground for night exercises was created near Nizhny Tagil. It included sections with various terrain, imitation of enemy fortifications, and a system of moving targets. The training ground was equipped with hidden observation posts, from where instructors evaluated the actions of the crews. A unique feature of the training was teaching crews to act in case of complete failure of night vision devices. Tank crews learned to orient themselves by the stars, determine direction by the sounds of battle, and even by the smells of burning fuel or gunpowder gases. Such skills often saved lives in real combat conditions. To coordinate actions in the dark, a simplified system of sound signals was developed. Short commands, transmitted by radio or voice, replaced complex daytime instructions. Crews trained to perform these commands automatically, which allowed them to maintain coherence of actions even under the severe stress of night combat. The first combat use of camouflaged night tanks took place in December 1942 near Stalingrad. The 7th Tank Brigade was tasked with breaking through enemy defenses in the Marinovka-Karpovka sector. The brigade commander, Lieutenant Colonel Kopylov, made a bold decision: to conduct an attack deep at night using the latest camouflage equipment. Experimental spark arrestor nozzles were installed on 15 T-34 tanks, and a special light-absorbing coating was applied. The crews underwent an accelerated night driving course. On the night of December 1920, the tanks silently advanced to their starting positions, using the silent approach method. The result exceeded all expectations. The tanks approached German positions to a distance of only 100 meters, remaining undetected. The sudden attack threw the enemy into confusion. German artillerymen did not have time to deploy their guns, and the infantry retreated in panic. The breakthrough of the defense was carried out with minimal losses. Only 2 vehicles sustained damage. Driver-mechanic Semyon Korovin, a participant in that attack, later recalled, "The Germans seemed to be blinded. We were already in their trenches, and they were still shooting randomly into the darkness. My vehicle passed literally 10 meters from an anti-tank gun, but the crew didn't even have time to turn the barrel in our direction. However, not all operations were so successful. In January 1943, near Rzhev, the 20th Tank Brigade launched a night attack on fortified enemy positions. Despite the use of all camouflage means, the operation ended in failure. The main reason was insufficient coordination with artillery and infantry. The tanks broke through the first line of defense, but were left without support and came under flanking fire from anti-tank guns. Company Commander Lieutenant Vasily Kryukov reported, "The camouflage worked perfectly. We approached the enemy closely, undetected. But when the battle began, the infantry lagged behind, and the artillery fired at the wrong squares. We found ourselves alone deep in the German defenses, without communication or support." This failure forced a review of night operation tactics. An important conclusion was drawn. Even perfect camouflage does not guarantee success without careful coordination of all branches of service. After this incident, special liaison officers responsible for interaction with infantry and artillery in night operations appeared in the headquarters of tank formations. Combined actions proved particularly effective. In March 1943, near Kharkov, a group of 7 camouflaged tanks conducted a night raid on enemy rear areas. The tanks moved with their headlights off, using only night vision devices. They attacked the headquarters of a German division, destroyed several ammunition depots, and sowed panic in the rear. The enemy was convinced that an entire tank regiment was attacking. The modernization of the legendary T-34 for night operations became one of the technological breakthroughs of Soviet engineering thought. By mid-1943, when the advantages of night combat became evident, a large-scale program was launched at tank factories to adapt serial vehicles for operations in the dark. The main changes concerned the exhaust system. Engineers created modular muffler nozzles, TNG-4, which could be installed directly in the field. These devices reduced the thermal signature of the exhaust by 80% and almost completely eliminated sparking. The design of the nozzles was constantly improved. If the first models significantly reduced engine power, by 1944 this drawback was completely eliminated. The cooling system also underwent modification. On night variants of the T-34, additional radiators with improved circulation were installed, which allowed for a reduction in the thermal radiation of the engine compartment. For the same purposes, special thermal insulation screens were used, placed between the hull and the exhaust system. Tankers nicknamed them fur coats. In winter conditions, they indeed resembled thick fur coverings. Special attention was paid to the modification of electrical equipment. Standard headlights were replaced with devices with a narrow beam and light-masking nozzles. For internal lighting, special lamps with a red light filter were developed, which were not visible from the outside, even through slightly open hatches. An interesting solution was the modification of the instrument panel. All indicators and scales were covered with a luminescent compound that glowed in the dark, but was invisible from the outside. For night versions of the T-34, removable camouflage elements were developed. The most effective proved to be special covers made of NOC-3 material, a fabric with a special weave and impregnation that absorbed up to 95% of incident light. The covers were attached to the hull and turret with special clamps, allowing them to be quickly installed and removed depending on the combat situation. For winter operations, white camouflage kits with the same light-absorbing properties were developed. Unlike ordinary winter camouflage suits, they did not give a characteristic shine when illuminated by enemy searchlights or flares. The history of creating specialized night modifications is closely linked to the name of engineer Mikhail Koshkin, who even before the war foresaw the need to adapt tanks for night operations. In his archives, a note dated 1939 was found, where he wrote, "The war of the future will not stop with the sunset. he who learns to fight at night will gain a decisive advantage. Mass production of night modifications began at the Ural tank plant in 1943. The first batch consisted of only 50 vehicles, but the results of their use were so impressive that by the end of the year, every 10th T-34 produced was equipped with a night camouflage kit. Particularly interesting was the fate of the special series T-34N, produced in a quantity of 200 units. These tanks had reinforced frontal armor protection and a comprehensive night camouflage system, including the first infrared observation devices. They formed the basis of special night tank battalions, which were used to break through particularly fortified enemy defense sectors. Heavy KV and IS tanks represented a special category of combat vehicles that required a specific approach to night operations. Their impressive size and weight made the task of camouflage particularly difficult, but Soviet engineers found effective solutions to this problem. The main difficulty was the characteristic silhouette of heavy tanks, easily discernible even in the dark. To overcome this drawback, special camouflage structures were used, distorting the familiar outlines of the vehicle. On KVs, light frames made of wooden slats and wire were installed, covered with Emgla-T fabric, a reinforced version of the standard camouflage material. Such a design created the illusion of an irregularly shaped object, resembling a small building or a hill rather than a combat vehicle. The exhaust system of heavy tanks posed particular problems. Powerful engines emitted significantly more hot gases than medium tank engines. Special multi-chamber Tashina K mufflers were developed for KVs, which not only reduced noise, but also cooled the exhaust gases, making them practically invisible at night. IS tanks used an improved Sumrak system, which divided the exhaust into several less noticeable streams. The tactics of using heavy tanks in night combat differed significantly from the use of medium vehicles. While T-34s operated in groups, KVs and ISs were more often used as single strike units, supported by infantry. The command used the psychological effect produced by a heavy tank suddenly appearing from the darkness. German soldiers called such attacks ghost phenomena and experienced real terror when a huge armored vehicle unexpectedly appeared in front of their positions. Night breakthroughs involving heavy tanks on the Kursk Bulge in July 1943 proved particularly effective. The 12th Separate Guards Heavy Tank Regiment, equipped with KV-1S vehicles, carried out a series of night attacks on the positions of the German Grossdeutschland division. Tanks, covered with a special compound and equipped with exhaust camouflage systems, approached German positions unnoticed. The sudden appearance of heavy vehicles caused panic among the enemy, allowing the tank crews to maximize their firepower with minimal risk. KV-1S tank commander Senior Lieutenant Nikolai Ermolayev recalled, "We approached the German positions at direct fire range. With the very first shells, we destroyed 2 anti-tank guns whose crews didn't even have time to turn their barrels towards us. The Germans scattered in a panic, abandoning their weapons. Our vehicles seemed like a real nightmare to them." A special approach was required for coordinating the actions of heavy tanks with other units. Due to their low speed, KVs and ISs could not maneuver quickly on the battlefield, which was compensated by careful planning. Before the operation, detailed reconnaissance of the area was carried out, identifying the most convenient routes, taking into account the carrying capacity of bridges and the nature of the terrain. For communication with the infantry, a system of light signals was developed, emitted by special lanterns with red light filters, which were practically invisible from long distances, but clearly distinguishable by the infantry accompanying the tank. The German command could not ignore the growing threat of Soviet night tank operations. As data on sudden attacks from the darkness accumulated, the Wehrmacht began to develop its own system of countermeasures. Initially, the response was rather primitive, an increase in the number of flare rockets and reinforcement of night patrols. However, by mid-1943, the Germans had created a comprehensive counteraction program. One of the first technical solutions was the widespread introduction of owl, infrared observation devices. These devices were installed at observation posts and allowed the detection of camouflage tanks at a distance of up to 800 meters. The principle of operation was based on registering the heat emitted by the engine and exhaust system. Even the most advanced Soviet camouflage systems could not completely conceal the thermal signature of a running engine. The second direction was the creation of Horchgerät, listening device, acoustic detectors. These devices, resembling huge metal ears on a tripod, amplified sounds and allowed operators to determine the direction and approximate distance to moving vehicles. They proved particularly effective on windless nights, when the sound of tank engines carried over significant distances. To combat Soviet night tanks, the Germans developed special tactics. The basis was a system of light corridors, pre-prepared sections of terrain that, upon detection of approaching tanks, were instantly illuminated by powerful searchlights. Tanks caught in such a corridor became easy targets for anti-tank artillery. German engineers also created special anti-tank mines with acoustic detonators. The T-Mine 43 device reacted to the characteristic sound profile of Soviet tanks and detonated as they approached. However, these mines proved not very reliable. They often detonated from extraneous sounds or, conversely, did not react to well-camouflaged vehicles. By the end of 1943, the German command issued a special directive, Counteraction to Russian Night Tank Attacks. The document prescribed the creation of a deeply echeloned defense system, with numerous false positions and firing points. Special attention was paid to the camouflage of anti-tank guns. They were placed in unexpected directions and often moved so that Soviet intelligence could not determine their exact location. An interesting tactical maneuver was the creation of sound traps. The Germans installed powerful loudspeakers that, at night, broadcast recorded sounds of activity in the rear. The work of field kitchens, soldiers' conversations, the noise of equipment. Soviet tank crews, guided by these sounds, often drove directly into camouflaged anti-tank positions. One of the most effective countermeasures was the use of specially trained dogs. German shepherds with keen hearing could detect approaching tanks long before sentries noticed them. In some sectors of the front, entire dog posts were created, groups of 3 or 4 animals with trainers who patrolled the front line of defense. The confrontation between camouflage and detection technologies developed with each month of the war. Soviet engineers improved stealth means, and German specialists developed increasingly sensitive detection devices. This technological race led to the emergence of many innovative solutions on both sides. The success of a night tank operation is impossible without coordinated interaction with infantry and artillery. Soviet command quickly realized even perfectly camouflaged tanks, without the support of other branches of service, become vulnerable after the first minutes of battle. The development of a comprehensive approach to night operations became a priority for staffs at all levels. The basis for successful interaction was a unified signaling system. In night conditions, radio communication often failed due to interference, and vocal commands could reveal positions. The solution to the problem was specially designed light signals. Tanks were equipped with special directional searchlights and colored light filters. A red signal meant readiness for attack, green, the start of movement, and a series of short white flashes indicated the direction of the main thrust. Infantry used similar, smaller signaling devices to mark their positions. This allowed tank crews to see where their comrades were and avoid accidental friendly fire. Artillery support for night tank attacks required special skill. Artillerymen could not visually adjust fire, as they did during the day. To solve this problem, a system of blind adjustment was created. Before the operation, the terrain was divided into squares with coded designations. Tank unit commanders reported by radio the numbers of the squares where artillery support was needed. To ensure accuracy of fire, pre-sighted landmarks were used: individual trees, buildings, road intersections. Tank crews could request fire on a specific landmark or indicate an offset relative to it. Infantry played a key role in ensuring the success of night tank attacks. Specially trained assault groups moved directly behind the tanks, using them as mobile cover. The task of the infantrymen was to destroy enemy anti-tank crews, who often remained unnoticed by the crews in conditions of limited visibility. For each tank, an infantry squad was allocated, 6 to 8 fighters, armed with submachine guns, grenades, and anti-tank rifles. They knew their vehicle by the characteristic features of its silhouette, or by conditional signs applied to the stern. One of the most successful examples of combined night operations was the breakthrough of enemy defenses near Kovel in July 1944. The 8th Guards Tank Corps carried out a night attack in conjunction with infantry and artillery. The operation began with a short but powerful artillery barrage on previously reconnoitered enemy firing points. Then the tanks moved, without headlights, with masked exhaust, covered with a special light-absorbing compound. Immediately behind them followed infantry assault groups. When the tanks entered battle, the artillery shifted fire deep into the defenses, suppressing enemy reserves and preventing them from organizing a counterattack. Tank Battalion Commander Major Vasily Bryukov recalled, "Our vehicles literally emerged from the darkness in front of German positions. The enemy detected us only when we opened fire from direct range. The infantrymen instantly jumped off the armor and destroyed the remaining firing points. The artillery worked so precisely that we could advance without fear of counterattacks from the flanks. Liaison officers played a special role in ensuring interaction. In each tank battalion, a special officer was assigned to coordinate with the infantry, and a second for communication with the artillery. They were at the battalion's command post and maintained constant contact with the respective units. If necessary, they could quickly adjust the battle plan, redirect artillery fire, or request infantry support in a threatened direction." By mid-1943, Soviet command recognized the strategic potential of nighttime tank operations. From a tactical maneuver of local significance, they evolved into an important element of large-scale offensives. Camouflaged tanks became an invisible battering ram, capable of breaching enemy defenses in the most unexpected places. The first large-scale application of night tanks in a strategic operation occurred during the Battle of Kursk. The 5th Guards Tank Army under General Rotmistrov used specially trained night units to break through German positions on the eve of the decisive battle near Prokhorovka. 2 tank battalions, equipped with a full set of camouflage equipment, attacked the positions of the SS Totenkopf Division on the night of July 12th. The result exceeded all expectations. The Germans detected the approaching tanks too late. By the time the signal flares went off, Soviet vehicles were already at direct firing range. Within minutes, 8 anti-tank guns and 2 observation posts were destroyed. The main forces then streamed into the breach. General Rotmistrov wrote in his memoirs, "The night attack completely disorganized the enemy's anti-tank defense system. When the main battle began in the morning, the Germans had already lost key firing positions and were forced to improvise." During Operation Bagration in the summer of '44, night tank attacks gained even greater scale. The 3rd Guards Tank Army used an entire regiment of specially trained vehicles for a night breakthrough in the Bobruisk area. Tanks, equipped with the latest exhaust camouflage systems and special night vision devices, broke through German defenses on a 3-kilometer-wide sector. Front Commander Marshal Rokossovsky called this operation a model of using the element of surprise. The German command was so demoralized by the night breakthrough that it ordered a retreat even before the main Soviet offensive began. Night tank operations played a special role in the Vistula Oder operation in the winter of '45. The 1st Guards Tank Army under General Katukov used a new tactic of night wedges, deep penetration of camouflaged tank groups into the enemy's rear. Tanks moved without lights, with muffled engines, using only night vision devices. The culmination of night tank tactics was the Battle of Berlin. During the assault on the German capital, Soviet command actively used night attacks to capture key objectives. The raid of the 23rd Tank Brigade gained particular notoriety. On the night of April 21st to 22nd, it captured an important transport hub on the approaches to Berlin. Camouflaged tanks passed through enemy positions with virtually no losses and appeared deep in the rear, causing panic among German units. The experience of the Great Patriotic War became the foundation for the development of night combat technologies in the post-war period. Soviet engineers, having accumulated invaluable knowledge in creating camouflaged tanks, continued to refine their designs even after the victory. The first post-war generation of tanks was already designed with the possibility of night operations in mind. The T-54 tank, which became the successor to the legendary T-34, received an integrated night camouflage system. The exhaust system was completely redesigned. Instead of traditional pipes, engineers created a complex labyrinth of cooling chambers, practically eliminating the thermal signature. Specialists joked that the tank became colder than the environment. Night vision devices made a real evolutionary leap. While the first wartime samples provided visibility for only a few hundred meters and produced a blurry image, the post-war Luna 1 complex allowed clear distinction of targets at a distance of up to 1.5 kilometers. By the early 60s, active-passive systems appeared, capable of operating even without infrared illumination, using the natural thermal radiation of objects. Progress in the field of infrared sights was particularly impressive. The TPN-141 complex, installed on T-55 tanks, allowed accurate night firing with the same precision as during the day. This technology was a decade ahead of foreign counterparts. Camouflage technologies also did not stand still. Simple light-absorbing coatings were replaced by multi-layer composite materials. The NOx-7 compound, developed in the mid-50s, not only absorbed visible light, but also reduced the thermal radiation of the tank's hull, making it difficult for enemy infrared devices to detect. It is interesting that many ideas born during the war received unexpected development. For example, the technology for reducing track noise using rubber gaskets evolved into full-fledged rubber metal tracks, which not only made the tank quieter, but also significantly increased the service life of the running gear. The experience of night operations during the Great Patriotic War was thoroughly studied and systematized in the post-war years. In the 50s, a special course, Tactics of Night Combat, was created at the Military Academy of Armored Forces, based on real combat episodes of the war. Many instructors were direct participants in those events. By the 70s, Soviet tanks received third-generation thermal imaging systems, capable of detecting targets by their natural thermal radiation, without any illumination. This technology, which originated from simple wartime infrared devices, revolutionized night combat. The continuity of ideas was particularly evident in the design of modern Russian tanks. The T-90, created at the end of the Soviet era, inherited many camouflage principles developed in the 40s. Its silhouette is specially designed with minimal visibility in night conditions, and the exhaust gas cooling system is based on the same principles as the first wartime spark arresters. The lessons of history do not lose their relevance even decades later. The Soviet experience in applying nocturnal tank camouflage remains a valuable source of knowledge for modern military specialists. In an era of high-tech detection and targeting systems, the principles of stealth and surprise, developed during the Great Patriotic War, have not only not become outdated, but have acquired new meaning. Analyzing the combat use of camouflaged tanks, several key lessons that remain relevant can be identified. Firstly, the advantage is always on the side of those who control the time and place of the engagement. A sudden attack from the darkness multiplies the shock effect and disorganizes the enemy's defense system. This principle remains unchanged regardless of the technological level of weaponry. Secondly, Soviet experience proved that even with limited technical capabilities, significant results can be achieved through a comprehensive approach to camouflage. Modern armies worldwide have adopted this concept, developing multi-level detection protection systems, from reducing thermal signatures to using radar-absorbing materials. An especially important legacy was the methodology for training crews for night operations. The psychological aspects of night combat, overcoming the natural fear of darkness, developing spatial thinking, all these elements of training programs developed by Soviet instructors have been incorporated into modern tank crew training systems in many countries. The evolution of the concept of stealth in tank operations has come a long way from the simplest camouflage covers to modern stealth technologies. However, the basic principles laid down in the 1940s have remained unchanged. A tank must be invisible to the enemy's eye, thermal imager, and radar. It must move silently and leave no revealing traces. These requirements, formulated by wartime Soviet engineers, formed the basis of technical specifications for developers of modern armored vehicles. In the context of modern military conflicts, the experience of nocturnal tank operations has acquired a new dimension. The emergence of unmanned surveillance systems, satellite reconnaissance, and high-precision weapons has changed the nature of warfare. However, the principles of surprise and stealth, honed during the Great Patriotic War, have not lost their significance. On the contrary, they have become even more important in conditions of ubiquitous surveillance systems. Soviet night tanks laid the foundation for the development of an entire direction of military science: the theory and practice of night combat. Methods of equipment camouflage, tactical techniques, systems for interbranch cooperation in conditions of limited visibility. All this became part of military art and continues to develop to this day. The most valuable legacy of the Soviet experience was the understanding of night not as an obstacle to combat operations, but as an advantage that can and should be used. This psychological shift in the perception of darkness changed the approach to planning operations and designing combat equipment.